comes to reveals, I'll figure out that part.
I do have, at least for anyone watching on my stream, I did set up on my OBS. I have the card art ready to go,
Oh,
and I'm just
great.
gonna
All right. Well,
unhide it
new
when
rule.
we get there.
Carly's now in charge of all tech.
I don't know how to screen share it to either of you on the meet though, but I've got it up on my stream.
Nice. Well, we'll get there. Let's see. I can share. All right. So you guys can see that okay?
Oh,
Yeah.
it works.
Cool. All right. So, new mechanics, augment and blast, and some sick Crux Cobalt artwork uh, that you want to get into, Carl. All right. What were the highlights of this article for you? Because people can go and read it in their own time, things they want to have a look at. But what was exciting? What were the highlights?
So the thing that I had mentioned a little bit to Bryce earlier, my background is as a Magic player, and I know there had been some teasing in the Discord a little while ago about how many things have been stolen from Magic and how many things are yet to be stolen from Magic. And augment is cool. It is. We finally have the enchantment aura that we have been wanting coming over from Magic. So I love the design space of let's temporarily make a creature better.
And what were your first reactions, Carl, when you saw this? I know you from a Magic background, or you not as much?
No, not so much at all. Uh, yeah, I was, you know, I guess I'm a combo player at heart, and my brain immediately went to, whoa, you can start stacking like exalts and augments, and then you like create this crazy, you know, crazy creature on the board. Um, and so I think that combining augments along with exalts from previous sets is going to be a pretty exciting thing to explore. And a big nugget of information in this article is that they say there's a new exalt in Shadows over Solace, but that is singular, not plural. So
Yep,
seems like
exactly
they're
one.
yeah, so they're stepping away from exalts in this set at least. Um, but I think that'll just open up the value of still like looking at your old decks and seeing what kind of crazy combinations you can come up with when pairing it with the new set.
Do you think this is the set that makes Aloyan great? Or maybe Aloyan is already great and we just didn't know, and Jed was the one to. Not you, Carl. You must be gutted. You weren't the one that broke Aloyan.
I
You've brought
know.
Aloyan to the top of tournaments before. You and Jed, singular, the two of you.
And oh yeah, well, and you have to remember weekend. Uh, Nate from Gen Con 1, he had uh, Aloyan Utera in the top four of Worlds. Um, and yeah, and Justice Blinded. I'm glad Eric is back in the community, always coming up with creative builds, and he was very prominent in the Ultimate Championship. So they've been there all along. Um,
For those
I have to,
willing to try and try again and experiment.
yeah. Um, yeah, I started, so like, well, we're talking about augment right now. But yeah, I have more thoughts about blast.
Well, let's get to that as well, just in case people have been under a rock and they haven't caught that news. So, Blast, what's our description of Blast? Blast allows a creature to deal a set amount of damage to a lane. If the lane's empty, all that damage goes to the enemy player. If there's an enemy creature in the lane, Blast deals to the creature first. Any excess damage spills over, like Breakthrough, to the enemy player. By default, Blast targets the opposing lane, but some abilities allow it to hit other lanes as well. Interesting. So we've had a little bit of it in the little preview of that in the Scorchworm campaign. We've seen the enemy blasting us to get an idea of how it works. But how exciting is it going to be to get a chance to do our own blasting? Particularly, Carly is a big fan of Chain Lightning. You must have been excited to see this.
Oh yeah, that Storm Strike card, that is busted, and I cannot wait to find some sort of fun minion build with that.
Yeah, Biologist comes to mind. Summoning Council, all the Utera spells are going to go so well with this, just to fill a board. Or the Eloyan, lots of Gizmos doing damage is going to be hilarious as well. Gizmos blasting.
Yes, I'm also a Drix enjoyer, so I'll probably find my best Drix deck and toss that in it.
Nice.
Yeah, I think my mind immediately went to like Lycian Rain as another minion spell. But I think it is, the design of this is smart, because this isn't unlike Chain Lightning, this isn't a persistent effect over the course of the turn. So you couldn't, for example, play Storm Strike and then play Lycian Rain and continue to blast. So like you kind of have to choose, okay, maybe I'll play, Lycian Rain level 2 to get the minions on the board, and then play Storm Strike to do the 25 damage level 3, but that way you're also not buffing, those minions that you're playing from this Storm Strike. So it's a little bit of a controlled situation.
And the combo player could dream of having a Betrayer and having 2 in hand at the same time, and then pulling off the mass combo. But it's like 1 in 50, 1 in 100 games that would ever happen if you got lucky. It'd be pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. And this blast mechanic makes me think of, there's a handful of creatures that care about dealing damage to the enemy player.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's the Spirit Steel Infiltrator that you get to reduce the attack when it deals damage to an enemy player. There's a Graveborn Caller playing minions. There is Reaper. You can increase attack. And then there's the Hacker. You can play minions. And then, of course, Grimgaunt Predator, being able to destroy creatures when it deals damage to the enemy player. So I'm sensing probably a lot of Grimgaunt Sacrifice Chamber decks wanting to mess around with Blast, because the hardest thing is dealing that damage to get the combo going. But if you could just blast in an empty lane, that's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, people are getting on the Grimgaunt Sack Chamber train, so it'll be fun to see that sort of rise. Maybe a few people will put away Rumble Spark for a while and try that obscene combo. What do we think of this new creature that got spoiled, Snowfear? So in the vein of what's our favorite, the one that art makes no sense.
Specimen.
Specimen. It's in the vein of Specimen, but much cooler in my opinion. No condition on its trigger, it just happens. So 0-10 at level 1 defender. At the start of the turn, this blasts 3. 0-14 at level 2. Start of the turn, this blasts 5, still a defender. And level 3, defender again. 0-32, which must be, aside from Crovius, one of the most health we've seen on a creature. At the end of this turn, this blasts 10. So what are your thoughts on this one when you saw it, or seeing it now?
Harley, I'll let you start.
Okay. First I gotta say I love that it's a Yeti.
Yeah.
I've always been like like a tribal like creature type kind of person, and I love the Yeti cards, and this one is just it's just so fun. I love that level 3 blocks Krogius. It is a shame that the blast will have no effect on him because he's immune to everything, but at least it does have the health to survive that initial onslaught of Krogius while you deal with how you're gonna handle getting him off the board somehow.
Yeah, we had a game the other day where I pulled out Krogius, and you said to me that's still your most hated card in the game, most despised card in the
Yes.
game. So I'm not
Yep.
surprised that's where your head went to. What about you, Carl? What came to mind for you? What strategies, or how do you want to abuse this?
Yeah, so we also learned that there's no reprint cards or reprint abilities in set 4.
Huge
So
news.
yeah, so something like suppressing or sonic burst is not, or Nyrali engulfer, is not in the set to answer this kind of creature. So yeah, my mind immediately went to like, what do you do with this thing? Because when you think about it, just level 1, it's gonna, I guess, it effectively has a 3, 3, 5, 10 attack during combat, or I guess not during combat, but after combat. Um, so you need to have, I guess you just need a pretty like an arrogant creature, and then some to deal with this. Because I guess if you can take care of it before combat ends, then its effect won't go off.
And you make a
Uh,
good point, like, because there's no set rotation or anything. That if this thing starts to see play, people start playing Sonic Burst and Nyralgi and Gopher again, and they crush it that way. So it has its flaw being low attack, and we have cards that isolate redact. Redact can hit it. Sonic Burst, basically, Aloyan set 1-2 has a lot of the solutions for this.
yeah, but then there is the augment. You could augment this creature, give it more attack, and increase its blast damage as well.
Good point. Yeah, Burning Lance. Let's talk about this one. Level 1, one of your creatures gets +5 attack, then attach this to one of your level 1 creatures, gives it breakthrough. Same again for level 2, except it's +7, can attach to a level 1 or level 2. Level 3, one of your creatures get 10 and attach to anything. What are the thoughts on this? Useful?
So the thing that I love the most about this one is that you don't have to target the same creature for the effects. You can give creature A the plus attack and then attach it to creature B. It's not tied to you have to just make one thing bigger and give it breakthrough.
That's a good point. Yeah. So if you're running like a breakthrough heavy deck, but you've got 1 or 2 creatures in there that you couldn't control that had no breakthrough, you're not double breakthroughing something that has no effect. You're making something else a threat. That's a really good point. Any other thoughts,
Yeah,
Carl?
yeah. So compare this to something like Feral Instinct. Instead of getting some shield, you're getting just all the stats put into the attack. But instead of breakthrough only lasting that turn, you get breakthrough as long as that creature is around. And so I think that's really great. Yeah, and I'm starting. Well, yeah, I was starting to think about how like with Exalts kind of made Dark Force Drain worse. So this kind of thing also makes Dark Force Drain just a little worse because the spells hang on the board for a little while. But once the creature's gone, then that spell's in your banish pile, and there's lots of effects that care about how many spells are in your banish pile.
I was just thinking, Carl, like you raised Grimgaunt Predator and Sack Chamber. They love this as well. Any way to get to the player's health if you're kind of doing it in two ways, like say you're increasing attack, adding breakthrough, you're killing the thing, that's a slay trigger, you're getting through to the player's health. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ouch. So anything
And then they
stealth.
just botanimate it, and it's fine.
There's always a way. And we talked a little bit about this style. I think, Carly, you said you were excited about it, but let's chat for a moment about this one. So, Veilbite, Aloyan, Stealth. When this is replaced, give the creature replacing this +4/+3 if it's level 1 attached to it, and it augments Stealth. And then stats are 7/5 at level 2 and 9/7 at level 3. What are the thoughts on this, guys? Maybe, Carl, you start for this one?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so this calls to mind like the Scrapper, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's a creature, but then you get an additional benefit if it's replaced. And I mean, I guess it's also like Charger Mammoth, where it's doing its thing, and then you replace it, and you just add that thing to whatever you're replacing it. So I think it's so Charger Mammoth is 4/4/6/6/8/8,
Yep.
something like that. Yeah. So this is a little more aggressively statted, and for stealth, that's excellent. Especially like if you can play it on Forge, right? You get that stealth, then off Forge, you replace it, get something to survive, and then the stealth is still there on the next turn. That sounds great.
And what about you, Carly? You said you were excited by this. What was it in Magic that you saw, and how did that kind of play out? And that maybe that context is useful for us who weren't Magic players.
And I'm glad that Carl brought up my boy Charger Mammoth, because that's definitely the thing I thought of too. Is this is just blue Charger Mammoth, and I'm here for it. But the first thing I thought when I saw this card is there is a cycle of enchantment creatures in Magic that have an ability called Bestow. This is kind of like backwards Bestow, because in Magic it's actually it's a choice when it's in your hand. You can either cast it as a creature and then it just is the creature, or you can cast it on top of one of your other creatures to enchant it. And when I first read this card, I hadn't, I did the skimming thing and hadn't actually read the article yet, and just thought that that's what this was, that I could choose to play it as a creature or I could choose to play it as an augment, because I didn't actually read the text that's on the card. But the reason I say this is like a backwards bestow is in Magic, if you bestow it as the enchantment first and then it somehow gets removed, then it becomes the creature. And this is just the opposite. It starts as the creature, and then when it's replaced, it becomes the enchantment. So a similar kind of mechanic, but in the opposite order. And it really is just blue Charger Mammoth, and I love it.
She's here for it. Awesome. Well, is there any more that you want to talk about in this article, or should we move on to some spoilers now? You guys feeling ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I'll see if this works.
Oh, there we go.
All right. Hammerflame. So Tempe's set for common. Let's ignore the symbol for now. They've just left the last winter symbol on there to give us an idea of rarity. So this is a pure augment, I guess, whatever you'd call that. Not like that one we were just looking at that's a creature and then becomes an augment. This is just an augment. Attached to one of your creatures, blast 4, and then when that creature slays, that creature gets extra attack. Immediate thoughts, Carl?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it's basically the kind of the spell aspect of it is the blasting 4, because that's kind of the one-time effect. But yeah, giving it the what is the Smash Fist slay ability basically? To
Hmm,
when it slays. Well, actually, no. The Smash Fist is give another creature
correct.
additional attack. Okay, so this is just it gets attack or this gets attack.
I was
Um,
thinking like dropping this, and you've got the last turn, and you drop this, and it blasts the creature out of the way, and then your creature, which is hopefully in the front lane, gets another 4 attack. So it kind of fits like a hungering strike kind of move. That how you would use that card, or how I've used that card before. You guys agree?
yeah, yeah,
What
definitely.
What are your thoughts, Kali? What comes to mind? What strategies?
I mean, I feel like you can't not bring up Grimgaunt Predator. This card is
The
just made
theme
for
of
him.
tonight,
Yeah,
MVP.
it's just so good. If there's no creature in the lane opposing it, just blast the opponent, kill something else, get the slay trigger, make it bigger. It just I love it. I feel like everyone knows that I love Chain Lightning, but I do have to
Yes.
admit that the biggest downside to Chain Lightning is that it doesn't really do anything the turn that you cast it. Like it makes a spell sprite, but okay, I got a spell sprite. I feel like they've kind of tweaked or solved that design with these kind of cards because it does have that, like Carl was saying, that the spell side of it of, when you play it, it gets to do this thing, and then it also adds the benefit. So I feel like it's a little bit more exciting to play a card like Hammer Flame than to play Chain Lightning if you don't have a good follow up play to immediately buff something's attack.
And so the progress as we go up in levels is what will we? I'll go back 1 second so we can look at it. So first we're Blast 4 plus 4. Level 2 we're Blast 6 plus 6. And level 3, Blast 8 gets 8. Could be a great finisher. So what are we thinking about that progression 4, 6, 8? Seems pretty solid, pretty aggressive, and kind of fitting in line with what they said Tempe's is going to do this set, try and wrangle away some of the control meta and make aggro kind of more of a thing, which I'm so excited about because I feel like most of my games I put up a really good start to the game and then I lose steam as the control engine sets in and I just go, okay, Jed, have fun with all your things. You win. What about you
Yeah,
guys?
I
You
mean,
think you're going to explore aggressive more? You're going to try and do those fast decks?
Yeah, that's
Carly
that's already
has
what I play. So
been. Um, yeah, I mean, I do. It's funny. I've with the with SolForge Fusion. Um, it's there's a tension between wanting to get to cycle 3, right? Because that's where all the fun effects are, right? But then there's so many aspects of the game that if you want to be, competitive, are encouraging you to not get to cycle 3. Uh, and that like aggressive decks, like I have a pretty aggressive red green deck that, by the end of cycle 1, the opponent can be at like, 15 health. Um, and I'm sensing that that's the direction that this is probably going. And maybe the aggressive style is like, okay, yeah, let's play 3 games, whereas the other style is like, yeah, we got 30 minutes, let's play a game to cycle 3. But it's an interesting tension point, I think. But I'm also a fan of like, Apocalypse blast style or burst style damage decks. So I can imagine that this blast mechanic is kind of also fitting into that play style.
Yeah, that's huge. Like you have an Apocalypse, you're about to lose it. they think they've got it covered. You blast it, and with a stealth creature, you've just pumped its attack. And now they have to deal with that next turn off Forge, unable to put something in the forward lane. That's a really good point about, I think, combining this with stealth is really interesting. Thanks for tuning in, Brandon and Solimer and Tony. We can open it up to the audience, so if anyone on your side, Carly, or anyone on my side has a comment or a question they want to put in, we're happy to talk to it. We do have one more spoiler, but yeah, any sort of finishing thoughts on this card? It'd be interesting to see how many of the spells are augments, like like when you got your set 2 and your set 3 deck, you looked at how many exalts you had, and that sort of maybe determined how you felt about the deck. So it'd be interesting if we have a similar kind of view about what are my spells and what do they do, because this is quite a good control piece. Assuming that the creature that you want to put it in is a lane that you want to deal in, that you are limited by whatever lane choices you've made previously, which might be something. Could be something to this as well with that sort of go wide mechanic. So you've got something lined up in each lane that could kind of do the blast wherever it's convenient.
I think mobility too is going to be crucial, so you can get your creatures where you need them for this mechanic.
You made me think of there's no way to do it without Betrayer, but we know Tony has a few Betrayer Dragon Wakes, but a Cinder Smoke Firm, like moving into an empty lane, essentially blasting, and then doing this again would be huge. Awesome. All right, well, we can come back to this if we have any other things or people have other questions, but let's do our last reveal for this episode. So it's a creature with blast. And here it is, the Inferno Drake Lindworm. So level 1, 5/3, creature elemental dragon, rare. When one of your creatures blasts, it deals an additional 1 damage. That's a sort of passive effect sitting on the board, Apocalypse style for replacement. And deploy one of your creatures' blasts equal to its level. Immediate thoughts, Carly?
So me being me and always living in multiple timelines of all of the card games I've ever played in my life, one of my absolute favorite card games from back in high school is one called Flux. I don't know if anyone out there has ever played it. It's just, a classic board game card game where it's not a trading card, it's not a collectible card, it's not nothing anything like that. But I was obsessed with it in high school, and one of the cards in that game is it's a card that modifies the rules, and it's just called X equals X plus 1. And it says anytime there is a numeric value, add 1 to it. And it just is my favorite card in the whole game because of the chaos and the extra step of, okay, wait, no, is it 3? Is it 4? I have to make sure I add the 1. And so that's what this is to me. This is the X equals X plus 1. Every time you blast an extra 1. I love that. And again, it has that, it's not that dead card of, okay, we get this cool thing, but when do we blast? Because it has the deploy on it too. So you're immediately getting that instant gratification of something's going to blast, and it's going to blast plus 1.
And we know that, I think from the rest of the article I garnered that, and also the chat on Discord that Fletch has been having with people, that Blast is really only going to be focused in Aloyan and Tempes, and more in Tempes than any other faction. So if you open up that set 4 deck and it has a lot of blasts and it has this dragon, you're going to be very happy, I think, with the outcome. We had our first sort of write-in question from an audience member. So Aaron Scuba Toad has written in, do you guys think Blast is more versatile than face damage? Anyone want to pick that one up? Anyone have some thoughts? More versatile than face damage.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's limitations and what the board state is. And depending on what you're trying to do, like sometimes, like in an Apocalypse style deck, the opponent is building up the board, and you're holding on to your Apocalypse and you're replacing things, and depending on how much life they have left and what the health of their creatures is, you may just shove all that damage to the player just to get things as close to the end as possible. And with this blast mechanic, yeah, I mean, if their board is full, then you don't have a choice. Or if your creatures are all blocked, then you don't have a choice. So I guess I have to give a final answer. I have to wait and see how many spells or augments or abilities that creatures have where you can choose the lane that they're blasting.
Yeah, and I was also thinking about sort of that gap that exists in the game between an Allomancer that can only target creatures and like a Seer Mecha Mage that has the choice. And this kind of is in between, like can hit face, can hit creature, can hit both, but it depends on what lanes it in, how much health do they have, can you move that creature around, do you have a way to collar it over to another area? So I kind of like that I think, have you guys experienced that? You got an Allomancer on the table and you just wished you had something to hit or wished you could hit face. You just
Yeah.
need something to do with that. Blast is really nice because it guarantees that you're going to do something if there's no creature there, and if there is a creature there, you're still going to do something. I think that's really positive design.
Ooh, here's a wish for set 4. A creature in a loin, of course, that when it blasts, the opposing creature gets reduced attack.
Ooh,
So
Yeah.
that you
very on
can
brand.
yeah, you can blast but still save the health of your creature that's blasting.
So the other thing Aaron said, he said, seems like the way creatures are usually lined up, you'll often have to make a choice for face damage or removal, and the leftover argument is just value. So I think he's kind of in line with our thinking, kind of sits in an interesting new space. No one's going to be surprised here, but Tony was thinking about pairing this with RSE. So I guess he's dreaming again about the betrayer.
Betrayer, yeah, either a betrayer one of these or
True, true. This is
betrayer.
more
That
likely than
Betrayer
the other.
Nova that he's always searching for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one
I
day.
just
I'm
had
sure he
a
bought all
comment.
the deal decks today trying to pull it.
Had a comment from Solomir on my stream, wondering if there's going to be things that trigger off of other things blasting, which would be a really
Ooh,
interesting combo piece too. Like a Palladium Simulacrum. Every time a creature moves, this gets bigger. Every time a creature blasts, X happens. Would be really cool to see.
very cool,
Probably in
especially
Aloyan.
building that kind of state. Here's the final version of it. We didn't really talk about the level 2, but the stats go from blast deals 1 extra, and then blasting of the level, that's a 5/3. Next level 7/5. When a creature blasts, it deals additional 2 damage. So that math is getting pretty out of control now if you've got a heavy blast build. I think in sealed, especially if you're playing sealed set 4, if you're playing this and a Loyan and you got blast on both sides, that would be hard to deal with. And still blasting you at a level. And the final form of Inferno Drake Lindworm, 8/7. When one of your creatures blasts, deals an additional 3 damage. This has to be a good finisher card. Any thoughts on that progression that you've seen across the 3? Maybe Carly.
Well, did get another comment from Solomir. I have my Twitch chat on my screen because I only
Nice.
have a laptop and only have one screen to stare at, so they're right in front of my face, which is great. Makes the comment that the level 3 Drake, it's an activate ability now instead of a deploy.
You're
Um,
right.
yeah, so he made the comment that could be things, anything that can like shut down abilities or Windweaver Seer to
Mm.
make it so you can't use it because that's no longer a deploy. It's now an activate.
Which could be an upside or a downside. Like you think about it in
Right.
terms of, I can do this each time, but you're right, Windweaver can shut it down after it's played and used. Thoughts, Carl?
Um, Yeah, I mean, just the additional 3 damage. I mean, it's a frail creature, right? I mean, I'm thinking about let's borrow Ank's methodology on the value, right? So it's like 6/6 at level 1, 9/9 at level 2, and was it 13/14 or something at level 3? So, you're losing a significant amount of stats for this ability, so it's probably very strong within the game. And yeah, that's a creature that you probably hope to play off Forge, keep on the board, get to do the activate twice, and then hopefully keep it alive with some additional augments.
Awesome. Well, I think that was a really fun sort of start to the preview season, start to the spoilers that we've been given. We've definitely got more coming that have been allocated toward us. So it's been a pleasure chatting to you both. This has gone really well. Thank you very much. Is there any last questions on your stream, Carly, or any that we haven't talked about? Any final thoughts? If I go back to the article, is there anything there maybe that we didn't talk much about? I thought there was a really interesting conversation on Discord about exalts and the discussion in here about kind of like mistakes made with exalts. Not quite that, but that they say exalts presented some design challenges. They're more difficult for players to interact with than creatures. They remain on board for the duration of the game. Persistent effects add complexity. These created development limitations. Didn't meet the criteria to become a permanent or evergreen mechanic. What are your guys' thoughts about exalts maybe playing less of a role in the game to come, at least for the short term?
I love exalts. I do. I agree with what the article says, that they are difficult to interact with, but that is actually kind of one of the things I like so much about them, particularly with the introduction of the digital client. Just having that visual of now the lane's a different color kind of helps you remember that there's something there. So I agree, and I think that it'll be really interesting to see how Augment sort of takes the place of Exalt for this set, and see how that power dynamic goes. But I'm gonna miss them. I do like a good Exalt.
What about you,
Yeah,
Carl? You going to be
yeah,
dancing on
yeah.
Exalt's grave, or are you going to be celebrating?
No, yeah, no, I'll miss the exalts in the set for sure. I think maybe I was messaging with you, Bryce, about this a little bit, like that set one, with the heavy control meta, and removal being prevalent and plenty. There can be games where you play a card and it just gets immediately destroyed. And I play another card, it just gets immediately destroyed, and you start to feel like you're not really doing anything in the game. And exalts were one way to sort of shift the value of your cards to different points in the game. So in set 2 was mostly like, you get half a card now, you get half a card later. And you can kind of decide when you want to use the rest of that card by playing into that lane. Or then, set 3, I think Reverse Souls, Fertile Ground, these energy counters, super powerful, super a great thing for combo players, where you can really just kind of bank your plays for when you really need them. And I think that also, especially when you're playing for example, set 3 against set 1, playing those exalts can be a big tempo hit, and it's a big risk because your opponent's just playing creatures and
Yeah,
then you're
gaining
trying
board
to
state, gaining advantage, and you're like, no, I'm going to go the long game, and that's always a dangerous proposition in SolForge Fusion.
yeah. So it's and I think it is really interesting. Like, it's a really interesting way to play the game, and kind of needing to maneuver your various game pieces into the right configuration to get the value out of the cards. And I feel like that's the direction that they're continuing to go with set 4, where they want the players to manipulate their game pieces in the form of creatures and augments and a little bit of exalts, and really kind of make sure that the creatures are interacting with each other, and that you have to manipulate things in just the right way in order to gain more value of your opponent. And so, yeah, I predict that removal will be not continue to not be as plentiful in set 4. But I'm sure there's going to be some, but maybe not as easy to access.
I'll share a little bit of what Nick said on the SolForge Discord, because not everyone who's tuned in might have caught that message or seen. So he said, Exalt still have a lot of room to explore in the future. Could easily see us re-exploring an Exalt focus set again in the future with lessons learned from 2 and 3, but isn't as much design space as we'd originally thought compared to creatures, non-Exalt spells, and augments. So that's interesting that it might come back. And, like Tony, you made some good points about not liking exalted creatures for all the work that goes into kind of setting them up, putting them in the correct lane. He said that's tough. That probably feeds into their overall philosophy about kind of just keeping it about creatures, spells, normal spells, and now augments. And then, what else is there? Really just that. Hard to imagine a world without exalts. It's been such a big part of our life for the last 2 sets. Any final thoughts or things you'd like to plug, or finishing moments? I mean, Tony did make a good point. He's made a couple good points in our chat. He's always got his head in RSE space, so he's just thinking the fact that Inferno Drake is an elemental means auto proc for Rumble Spark in whatever lane it's in. Do we know, does Blast work if it's in the front or back of the lane, or does it only work in the front of the lane? Do we know that?
I don't think it matters. I'm pretty sure it works either way.
Just thinking out loud here. Blast allows a creature to deal a set amount of damage to a lane. If the lane is empty, all the damage goes to the enemy player. I might ask that question. I don't know. Am I silly for thinking that might be a thing, whether it's front or back? Because normally, like, breakthrough doesn't trigger unless you're in the front of the lane. Damage generally doesn't trigger unless you're in the front of the lane, but maybe Blast would.
I mean, like, you think of a specimen, right? It doesn't have to be
true.
in the
Yeah, there are cases. Oh, and then we had that defender who can do blast, so it would be a bit of a pointless card if you couldn't do blast from the back lane, considering he's not going anywhere else. Okay, question thought, question answered. Tony also said Sack Chamber interacting with things in weird ways is definitely design space to be careful with, since there's tons of potential overlap. So I guess summary of today: Grimgaunt, Predator, Sack Chamber, new meta. Or it just got stuck in our head and we couldn't get it out the whole session, which tends to happen in groupthink. But thanks very much both for joining. Thanks everyone who joined on Carly's stream and who joined on my stream. We are thinking about joining the streams at some point and trying to make like a collective audience would be fun. And we might have to get you on Twitch as well, Carl, so that you can still join in the rest of us. So we'll see how we go with tech in the future, but we really appreciate everyone tuning in. We'll share these on all those spoiler channels, and hopefully you guys come back and say hello again. We enjoyed having you.
Thanks, Bryce. Thanks, Carly.
Yeah, thanks for sharing this with us, Bryce.
No, pleasure. Absolute pleasure. It's so much more fun doing content with the two of you than just myself and a guest, so thanks. Awesome. All right. See everybody later. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.